My girlfriend announced on her podcast, "My boyfriend's impotent. Let's discuss why men are so fragile about this." I'm not. 50,000 people heard it. I commented, "Interesting episode." Then I sued her for defamation, with medical records proving otherwise. When her sponsors dropped her and her settlement offer emptied her savings, I realized revenge wasn't the win that I never thought I'd be the guy who ends up in a courtroom because of a podcast. But life has a way of testing how much humiliation you're willing to tolerate before you fight back. My name's Daniel. I'm 33, a data analyst in Toronto. I'm not the loud, revenge-fueled type. Most people would describe me as calm, methodical, a little reserved. I like structure, quiet hobbies, hiking, cooking, and audiobooks about finance. 2 years ago, I started dating Laura, 29, journalist turned podcast host. She ran a show called Modern Love, Unfiltered. Think pop psychology meets shock entertainment. Her niche was being brutally honest about relationships, the kind of show that sold radical vulnerability, but mostly thrived on outrage. When we met, I actually admired her drive. She had a natural charisma, that effortless, fast-talking energy that makes you feel like you're being interviewed and flirted with at the same time. She'd joke that I was the control group to her chaos. I thought that was affectionate. Turns out, it was foreshadowing. At first, her content didn't bother me. She'd discuss general topics, dating apps, modern masculinity, emotional labor. I'd listen while cooking dinner, occasionally teasing her about misquoting stats. She'd laugh and say, "That's why you're around, to fact-check me and keep me humble." But somewhere around year 2, the tone shifted. Her episodes became more personal. She started referring to my boyfriend as an unnamed character in anecdotes, minor things at first. "He's so analytical he checks restaurant reviews like it's a risk assessment," or "he folds laundry like he's doing origami." Harmless, right? Listeners loved it. She got more engagement, sponsors started paying better. But then she realized something dangerous. The more intimate the stories sounded, the faster her downloads climbed. One night, she asked, "Would you care if I did an episode on intimacy?" I shrugged. "Not really, as long as it's not about us." She smiled too casually. "Of course not, babe. It's about men in general." I didn't think much of it. Until 2 weeks later. It was a Thursday afternoon at work. My coworker, Sam, came over to my desk looking uneasy. He had his AirPods in. "Hey man," he said slowly. "You might want to listen to Laura's new episode." He sent me the link. The title read, "Episode 67. Let's talk about male fragility and bedroom anxiety." At first, I thought, okay, maybe it's about toxic masculinity or something sociological. Then she said it. "So, funny story, my boyfriend's been struggling with, performance lately. Totally normal, right? But he got super defensive, and it made me realize how fragile men are about their ego." She laughed. She actually laughed. Like, "I'm not saying he's impotent, but let's just say the mood died faster than my Wi-Fi when my neighbor downloads torrents." The audience laughed. She laughed harder. Then she added, almost sing-song, "Anyway, he's a good guy. He'll figure it out." That's when I stopped breathing. It took me a minute to understand what had just happened. She'd just broadcast my private life, something intimate, personal, and false, to tens of thousands of people. For context, I'd had a temporary issue, stress-related, nothing medical, nothing lasting. We talked about it once. I thought it stayed between us. Apparently, to her, it was content. That episode went viral. Clips were all over TikTok and Twitter within 48 hours. Anonymous boyfriend became a meme on her subreddit. People made comments like, "He probably looks like the guy who apologizes after sex." Imagine being the dude who can't perform and still dates a podcast skull. It didn't take long before friends, co-workers, even distant relatives connected the dots. Toronto's not that big. Her listeners knew we were dating. She'd posted me before, blurred face selfies, matching trips. Within a week, my LinkedIn messages were flooded with screenshots from strangers saying, "Bro, this you?" When I confronted her, she tried to downplay it. "Oh my God, Daniel, it's not that deep. I didn't use your name. Nobody knows it's you." I just stared at her. "Do you really think people are that stupid?" She crossed her arms. "It's my podcast. I talk about my experiences. If you're embarrassed, that's not my fault." Something inside me went cold. That was the first time I realized she didn't see me as a partner, just a narrative. She touched my arm, all performative sympathy. "Look, Maybe it hit too close to home. But you know how this works. Controversy drives engagement. I said quietly, "You turn my body into your content." She rolled her eyes. "Jesus, Daniel, you're being dramatic." I left her apartment that night and didn't go back. But the damage was already done. Over the next few days, people from my industry started talking. My boss asked if everything was okay at home. I had to pretend I didn't know what he meant. The following Monday, I booked an appointment with my doctor. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted a record, a medical record, something that could prove, clinically, that what she said wasn't true. It took me another month to contact a lawyer. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Her episode had reached over 50,000 downloads, and sponsors were still running ads. Every day that audio stayed up, it painted a public image of me I hadn't agreed to. My lawyer listened to 10 minutes of it before saying, "Yeah, this is textbook defamation and invasion of privacy. You have proof of harm, personal and professional." So we filed. I didn't tell her first. I just commented under her latest episode post. "Interesting episode." And when her listeners replied with laughing emojis, I smiled. Because by then, the legal papers were already in her inbox. The email arrived 3 days later. Subject line: "Seriously, Daniel?" It was Laura, of course. Her tone was a mix of outrage and disbelief. The way someone reacts when the consequences finally show up, but they still think they're above them. "I got served today." "What the hell, Daniel? You're overreacting. You know I didn't mean it literally. It was a joke. My lawyer says you don't have a case. You can't sue someone for feelings." I didn't respond. My lawyer told me not to. Silence, he said, was power. 2 days later, she posted a 10-minute response on her Patreon, the paywalled tier of her podcast where she usually gossiped about influencer drama. It was called, "So My Ex Is Suing Me." She framed it like I was unstable, an insecure man trying to silence a woman's truth. She said she was heartbroken that I'd lawyered up instead of communicating like adults. She cried on camera. She said she didn't name me. And then she said something that would end up destroying her case. I even showed him that draft before posting. He never said no. That was a lie. And I had the proof, in the form of our text thread, where I'd explicitly told her, "Don't talk about us on your show. Keep our relationship private." When my lawyer saw that, he actually smiled. "Congratulations," he said. She just admitted to publication, identification, and negligence on tape. The lawsuit was slow, clinical, and deeply unfunny. I didn't get any catharsis, just paperwork, invoices, depositions. Her legal team tried to argue that the episode was satirical commentary, that her statements were subjective. Mine countered with medical documentation. I'd gotten a full physical weeks earlier, clean bill of health, every metric in the green. Her attorney actually tried to object to its relevance. My lawyer leaned forward and said, flatly, "Your client told 50,000 people my client is sexually impotent. I think his reproductive health is relevant." The judge agreed. Meanwhile, the internet started to turn on her. When the lawsuit became public record, Reddit found it. Twitter found it. Someone posted the clips side by side with the court filing. Hashtag defamed by Bay trended for a day. Her podcast sponsors, a therapy app, a skincare brand, and a dating platform, quietly pulled their ads. Within a month, her revenue dropped by 70%. She tried to rally sympathy by calling herself a victim of cancel culture. But the more she talked, the worse it got. Because now people were asking, if she lied about this, what else has she exaggerated? Around that time, I started getting messages from her friends, the ones who used to ignore me. A few apologized. One of them said, "I told her this would backfire. She said you wouldn't dare sue because it would prove her point." That line stuck with me. She really believed I'd just eat the humiliation to protect her image. She mistook restraint for weakness. The mediation hearing was almost anticlimactic. She showed up in an oversized blazer, makeup heavy enough to hide exhaustion. When our lawyers went back and forth, she barely looked at me. Her side offered a small settlement, just to make it go away. My lawyer declined. When we played the episode recording aloud in that sterile conference room, she flinched. Hearing her own voice, laughing, mocking, stripped the self-righteousness right out of her. After the playback, my lawyer slid the medical report across the table. It was silent for almost 30 seconds. Then her attorney whispered something in her ear. She exhaled shakily and said, "Okay, we'll settle." The final amount wasn't astronomical, but it was enough. Enough to cover my legal costs, emotional distress, and one more small detail my lawyer insisted on adding. A clause stating she must publicly retract her statements within 30 days, using the same platforms where the defamation occurred. Her next episode began with a script that sounded like it had been written at gunpoint. I want to correct and apologize for a statement made in episode 67 of my podcast. My comments about a private individual's medical condition were false and based on assumptions. I deeply regret sharing private information that was not mine to share. It wasn't the dramatic gotcha moment I'd imagined months earlier. It was dull, tired, hollow, like she finally understood the weight of her own words. Afterward, she messaged me privately. "You win. Hope you're happy." I thought about replying. "I'm not, but I'm done." Instead, I deleted the message. A week later, her show disappeared from Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Her Patreon went silent. The social media accounts she'd once lived through gone. It was surreal, watching someone's entire online identity collapse in slow motion. But I didn't celebrate. I just felt relieved. Because finally, the noise stopped. Still, sometimes, late at night, I wondered if I'd gone too far. If maybe I'd been petty, vindictive. But then I'd remember sitting at my desk, listening to her voice, and 50,000 people laughing at something intimate and false. And I'd remember how she smiled and said, "It's not that deep." It was. It was my dignity. The lawsuit wasn't about money or revenge. It was about boundaries, the invisible ones that keep us human in a world obsessed with oversharing. And for the first time in a long time, I finally felt like I had them back. Update 1.6 months after the settlement. My life feels almost normal again, though normal has a different texture now. It's quieter, more intentional. There's a calm I didn't know I missed until I got it back. The lawsuit wrapped in late spring. The settlement funds hit my account in May. I didn't buy anything extravagant. No victory car, no revenge vacation. I paid off my student loans, made a donation to a legal aid clinic that helps people fight online harassment, and started therapy. Because even though I'd won, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like closing a file drawer after reading too many ugly reports. For weeks afterward, people kept bringing it up, coworkers, acquaintances, even distant relatives. They wanted updates, gossip, behind-the-scenes drama. One colleague half-joked, "You should start your own podcast, Defamation Nation." I laughed it off. But deep down, I realized something. People treat pain like entertainment until it happens to them. As for Laura, I hadn't heard much. After the forced apology, she vanished from public life. Her sponsors dropped her permanently, and the episode archives were removed from Spotify and Apple. Rumor had it she'd moved to Montreal, doing freelance copywriting under a pseudonym. Part of me pitied her, genuinely. She was talented, articulate, even clever when she wasn't weaponizing her charisma. But her downfall wasn't bad luck. It was arrogance, this belief that she could twist anyone's story into content and call it authenticity. In June, she sent one last email. Subject line: "Closure. I'm writing this because I need to move on. I won't apologize again. I've already done that publicly, but I hope someday you'll understand that what I did wasn't meant to hurt you." I thought it was honesty. I thought I was helping women relate to their partners. I see now that it was selfish. She ended it with, "You were kind to me when I didn't deserve it. I hope you find someone who doesn't confuse kindness for weakness." I didn't reply, but I also didn't delete it. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. More like a footnote in a chapter I'd finally finished reading. Professionally, things improved. Ironically, a few podcasts reached out asking to interview me, the guy who sued his ex and won. I turned them all down. I didn't want to become what I'd fought against, another story for clicks. Instead, I quietly started consulting with a small law firm that handles privacy and reputation cases in the influencer space. My data background made it a natural fit, tracing digital footprints, monitoring online harm. My lawyer joked, "You went from being a victim to being an expert witness." He wasn't wrong. Then, one Friday evening in late August, I saw her again. It was at a small networking event downtown, tech-adjacent crowd, free wine, polite chatter. She was across the room, talking to someone I vaguely recognized from the journalism world. Her hair was shorter, her posture smaller. Our eyes met for maybe a second. She looked away first. For a moment, I felt the old instinct, to comfort, to smooth over the discomfort. But then I remembered what it had cost me last time. So I turned back to my group and kept talking. No bitterness, no longing, just distance. Later that night, as I walked home, I replayed that tiny moment in my head. There was something strange about how normal it felt, seeing her and not feeling anything at all. That, I realized, was what closure actually looked like. Not an apology, not revenge, just indifference. Still, sometimes I think about the day the lawsuit papers were served to her studio. How she probably read my name on that envelope and laughed at first, thinking it was a bluff. And how that laugh must have faded when she realized it wasn't. Because that's what truth does when it finally lands. It's quiet, steady, and undeniable. People online still occasionally bring it up. Whenever someone posts, "Be careful what you share. Oversharing ruins lives," my story surfaces in the comments. Someone always tags me. I never reply, because my part in it is over. Next month marks 1 year since it all began. And I already know what I'll do that day. Absolutely nothing. No posts, no reflections, no symbolic milestones. Just coffee, work, and the silence of not needing to prove anything anymore. Final update that it's been exactly 1 year since I commented, "Interesting episode." 1 year since a podcast turned my private life into a public punchline. 1 year since I learned what happens when you let someone narrate your existence for you. The anniversary didn't hit me with fireworks or nostalgia, just a strange, calm recognition. The same way you glance at an old scar and think, ah, right, that happened once. I'm still in the same apartment, still working in data, still volunteering part-time with the legal clinic I donated to after the settlement. But something in me has changed, permanently. I used to think privacy was about secrecy. Now I think it's about dignity. Last month, I was invited to a small media ethics conference to give a talk on digital boundaries and personal narratives. I almost said no. I didn't want to relive it. But my mentor, a soft-spoken lawyer named Ruth, said, "Your story has value only if you can use it to help others." So I went. The event was modest, maybe 60 people, mostly journalists and podcast producers. When I stepped onto that stage, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was just resolved. I spoke about how easily authenticity becomes exploitation when there are microphones involved. How consent disappears when the storyteller controls the edit. How we've turned vulnerability into currency, and how quickly it bankrupts everyone involved. The room was silent when I finished. Afterward, a few attendees came up to thank me. One woman said, "I used to run a relationship podcast. Hearing this makes me rethink everything I've ever posted." That meant more to me than the lawsuit ever did. Then, during the post-panel reception, I saw her. Laura. She was standing near the back, wearing a press badge that said freelance writer, Montreal Independent. No entourage, no spotlight, just a quiet observer with a notepad in her hand. Our eyes met across the room. She hesitated, then started walking toward me. "Hey," she said softly when she reached me. "Didn't think I'd see you here." "Same," I said. She looked different. Thinner, older, but not in a tragic way. More grounded. The performative shine was gone. "I read about your work," she said. "That clinic you help with, it's good. You're doing something meaningful." I nodded. "Trying to." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I just wanted to say, I really am sorry. Not the PR version, not the settlement version. I mean it. I was so obsessed with being seen that I didn't realize I was turning people into props." I didn't say anything. I let the silence stretch between us. Finally, I said, "I appreciate that. I really do. But I think we both paid enough for that lesson already." She gave a small, sad smile. "Yeah, we did." Then she added, "You know, the worst part wasn't losing the show. It was realizing that even when I told the truth, people stopped believing me. That's what happens when you use honesty as a weapon. Eventually, it cuts your own credibility." That line stayed with me. We parted politely. No drama. No bitterness. Just two people standing on opposite ends of a story that had finally run out of pages. I walked home that night through the cold Toronto air, thinking about her words. She wasn't wrong. Truth, when wielded carelessly, doesn't liberate, it corrodes. And that was the real cost neither of us had calculated. The lawsuit, the settlement, the public apology, none of that fixed the damage. It just made it visible. The real healing came from the silence afterward. The months where nobody was talking, nobody was listening, nobody was performing. Just life, unbroadcasted. Every once in a while, someone still recognizes me online. A thread resurfaces, a tweet gets reposted, and my inbox fills with comments like, "You're a legend, man. You ruined her." Or, "You're my hero for standing up to narcissists." But those messages miss the point. I didn't ruin her. I didn't win. We both just faced the truth, mine through restraint, hers through exposure. And neither of us came out unscathed. These days, I'm careful about what I share and with whom. I've stopped performing my life, even in small ways. No more curated posts, no vague captions, no broadcasting milestones. Peace, I've learned, thrives in privacy. Sometimes, when I'm working late, I'll glance at the corner of my desk where I once kept a microphone, a gift Laura gave me when she convinced me to record guest episodes. It's dusty now, unplugged, but I never threw it out. A reminder, I guess, that words, once spoken, never really disappear. You just decide what story they tell next.